I'd really like to see more craft producers start to emerge and offer that, that sweet spot of more of a craft quality or boutique quality flower to the market. I think both the recreational and the medical consumer would benefit for something like that.
Yeah, I agree. But I think, at least, especially in Germany, but probably throughout Europe, the standards that are put on to the medical products are so high that it's difficult to really put out these craft type of strains. Because like in Germany, for instance, once you get your product registered, all subsequent batches forever and ever have to be within 10% of the THC level, which is basically not physically normally possible because there's always going to be some slow drift of your strain. Everything changes. So then you have to, do cloning and all these, where you save the tissue samples so then you can regenerate from tissue samples. So you are always really having a true clone. And, it's just time and money intensive. But that's what you have to do currently to be able to satisfy those demands from the regulators. Whereas if you have recreational, I would assume that those parameters would fall away, or those rules, with THC level having to always be constant because it's not a medicine anymore, so it doesn't really matter. My guess is it would just have to be what the label says, and within a certain range based on that. That's where I think where it'll be exciting for all the different types of craft strains that you can have, and then you can also do more soil growing and things like that. If you're growing in soil or outdoor, it's even more difficult to meet those medical rules, those tight standards. So most companies are forced to do hydroponic growing, which is a great method, but I think you lose some of that interesting input that you get from growing outdoors or growing in soil, because then the plant really takes on some of those characteristics, or if you're growing outdoors, then your elevation and just where you're growing will affect how those plants end up growing and tasting later. It'll be really interesting when recreational is able to flourish. That I think that's when you start to see all these fun, interesting strains like you have in the U.S. The U.S. I think you have over 7,000 strains available.
Yeah,
and that's what's available. The growers have probably 100 times of that available, in their seed banks. But yeah, in Europe, you've got, like you said, in the UK, something like 95, and I think in Germany, it might be a little bit more, but you don't have that much variety.
yeah, definitely. That was one thing I really miss about living in Oregon. I really loved having my own plants as soon as I could. That's the first thing I did. My dad had been growing for a while, so he immediately just gave me some starters, and I was off to the races with that. And it didn't stop me going and purchasing from my local producers, but I still had my own material as well.
Mm-hmm.
And there was just something nice about feeling like I was, being able to grow. It's like growing your own tomatoes, but instead I got to grow my own medicine. So it
Yeah.
was really therapeutic. And I think that everything in Germany and the UK is still in its infancy. By